It is the 1st of February 2025. We've been quiet for a little while, haven't we?
Sure have.
For various good reasons, but we thought we'd come back now whilst it's all getting a bit interesting out there in terms of what's being said and put forward by various people in the public domain.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe discussion should really start with all the drones. And the fact that basically Bitterstorm man-made is. I know a lot of people want to believe that they're extraterrestrial or part extraterrestrial or whatever, but the Zetas have said that all the technology that's been flying through that airspace is based in human technology. It doesn't mean that they didn't back engineer some of that stuff to actually get that information, especially with the plasmoids, as people would call them. And all they are really is just a drone with a technology that is a holographic representation that's able to show imagery from the molecular structure of the sky, like something like projecting an image onto water or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, when people are looking at the plasmoids, they're going to see an undulating level of colour that rolls through, or an undulating type of shape or something like that, because it's designed to do that. It's obfuscation, really.
Human obfuscation.
Yeah, absolutely. Human obfuscation. I mean, for whatever reason as well. I mean, this technology's been around for a long time. And I think that sort of leads on to, sort of the whole concept of psionics, which has been around since 1950s or something, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I actually thought, probably like most people, that was a new word they've made up, like, all the other silly words they've made up recently instead of saying UFO and things like that. But apparently not. Apparently that's not the case. And apparently, if you are a Dungeons and Dragons roleplay fan, you'll know that word from many generations ago. And God, how long that game's been out for now? But I think the definition of the word psionics, when we looked it up, was
That it was coined back in 1950, combining PSI, a term for psychic phenomena, with electronics, that's suggesting a scientific approach to psychic ability.
Yeah, and that's certainly what's been suggested is being done when we listen to those latest interviews with Ross Coulthard. These groups, I think he's been interviewing that group, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he's actually part of that group.
No. But that's exactly what they're talking about. A couple of team members having the ability to supposedly call in craft, and then there's also been reference to some technology that emits some sort of frequency that calls in craft as well. So
I think what I find interesting is that it's gone from everything's sort of technical and mechanical to now it's based in consciousness and telepathy and psionics and all sort of altered states.
But I wonder if it always was.
Well, it always has been. But
it's just they didn't want you to know that.
It just takes a while for people to get there, because in the past, any of the craft, and even like with Greer, he said that there's multiple craft that have been captured by certain organisations and back engineered, as have other people as well. They've come out and said that too. The thing is that they've always talked about a consciousness interface, a telepathic interface between the beings, and that there was no physical control mechanism to be able to control the craft, because these craft were, craft consciousness. Now, these sorts of things have been spoken about by the Zetas for many, many years. And, like the Zetas are talking about what's going on with humanity, in regards to the split, humans going one way, humans going, a spiritual way, and then humans going a technological way as well. And so people are talking as though this is something new. But this sort of stuff has been talked about years and years, even by Ray Kurzweil, the discussion of the singularity. And of course, if we look at Montauk and those sorts of projects, we see that they were working in consciousness and sort of out-of-body experimentation, all this sort of stuff. So, look, none of this stuff's actually new.
But didn't they do their best to discredit that anyone who claimed any level of beyond ordinary ability, was a crazy person?
But they did that on purpose.
Of course, they did it on purpose because in the background, from at least the 60s onwards, you've got all the psyops, you've got all the remote viewing, you've got all of that they were using. We know they were using it.
Well, weren't they even using the Gateway project? Like so, the Gateway stuff. That's all about consciousness as well. So there were certain departments, not to mention the three-letter names, that were sort of put out a document for people to learn how to do, sort of travel via a gateway. Basically, everything's consciousness. I mean, you may look and see everything as physical, but ultimately, everything is just space. And I think it's what consciousness is what defines what looks or seems to be physical.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. But I think the discussion today primarily is more about sort of using your telepathic powers, if you want to call it that, to actually call in craft, and whether a person should even try, and how many people now at this point in time with disclosure, or with certain levels of disclosure, are going to try to use C5 type processes or psionics to actually call in craft. And so let's give you a scenario. There's a person who's a strong psychic and they say that they can call in the craft. Well, the problem is, I believe, who are they calling in?
Well, we've always said that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Always, from day one, to use common sense. And we've always used the open door analogy when we're trying to explain that. And we've used this analogy so many times, not just for UFOs or for extraterrestrials, but for, even just a spirit calling in spirit people too. You do not stand on your doorstep generally, open the door and, yell for anyone to come in, do you? You just don't do it. And it's the same, it's exactly the same for this process. If you're going to start trying to call in A, B, and C, you need to know who you're calling in.
Yeah.
It's just so dangerous.
The Zetas have been very clear that humans should not summon anything to them because there's so many variations to frequency, so many variations to consciousness, and so many different types of beings that exist through a myriad of frequencies. And because of that, when a person's summoning something, you actually don't know what you're summoning. Now, a person may say, but if I do it with the best motives and I come from a loving space and all the rest of it, okay, so you're sitting outside and you look up and you're summoning something from a loving space and you see a flash of light in the sky, okay? Now, it's not a satellite, it's not, this, and it's not a plane and all the rest of it. If that's evidence for you, then that's evidence for you, but it's not evidence in a way that is constructive, because
you have to ask what actually is it? It's an unexplained flash in the sky, but what does it actually? What do you do with that? Where do you go with that?
It doesn't. But what it doesn't do is what we've said all along. It does not bring contact.
Well, no, absolutely not.
Right. So we've said from the very beginning, it doesn't matter if they disclose everything today. It's all out there on the TV today, right? Everything, all the paperwork, all the people all standing together, and tomorrow everybody's outside looking into the sky. Where are the aliens?
Yeah.
And that's really the issue as to why it doesn't matter really what humans do. Then they're not going to get the contact they want. And I think this is really super frustrating for everybody, because we have to ask ourselves why. Why is contact so difficult? What do you think about why contact is difficult?
Why do I think? Why do I think it's so difficult?
In your experience?
I'd say there are 100 million different reasons as to why it's so difficult. First, I mean, like, where do you want to start with that? People don't have the patience to develop.
That's the
People
biggest one.
People don't even realize that they can develop. People think that you've got to be, I don't know, some special sort of person to be able to develop even in the first place. And what does development even look like? Everybody wants their instant everything. So nobody's prepared to wait for 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 years of their life. It takes them, and it really does take that long to get somewhere. That's just the first thing.
Well, it does in most cases, but then other people like Bledsoe or others, it's said that they can call into us. Now,
but who are they calling in?
Yeah, but that's really the issue. But the other thing is were they actually being contacted if that person's, say, 50 or 60 years old? How does that person know that they actually weren't being developed by a race for the last 50 years?
Yeah, absolutely. But most people, the people that we work with in training for contact with their own race, not some random race. Generally, when we talk to them, that we realize that, or they realize that their race, because they're a hybrid, their race has been working with them for decades. It's just that it's done in such a way that we don't realize. And development isn't always what people think it is. In fact, most cases it's not. And so, we have these preconceived ideas of what development with a race should look like. But when it comes down to it, it's normally something completely different. But what we definitely do know from person to person, it's always different.
Yeah.
Always different.
And this is based on person's construct. So let's say that you want to develop today, and of course you've got all your own beliefs and your own biases and your own rules and the way that you think and all the rest of it. What if the way that you think isn't the way that the race thinks? And you're going to try to interface with that race, but you're a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work.
And that's generally
generally what the case is.
Yeah.
And we have to ask ourselves, well, what's this really all about? I notice a couple of things that these craft, and just jump around a little bit, these craft are basically transmedium. So they're able to go from, say, the air into the water. There's not a splash. They're able to travel very, very fast, but not make any sonic booms. Everything that they do is based in, is the word obfuscation? It'd be obfuscated.
Well, I guess, I was going to say in frequency.
But what they're trying to do is they're trying to do everything as quietly as possible without being noticed. And they'll do it in a way that basically they're safe. And that's really what it comes down to. So any type of contact situation, and it doesn't matter where it is, if it's one that they've instigated, they'll have set the place, the time, the contactees, all that sort of stuff. And what's that based around? That's based around the fact that it's got to be a safe space for them to have contact. So a lot of people that will in the future do psionics, or even now, will go out into the middle of nowhere and they'll see a couple of flashes of light in the sky. But they have to understand that who are they trying to interface with? Because let's imagine that the being on the inside of the craft, or even the craft itself that may have an established consciousness, is allowing itself to be recognized by your mind, by your telepathic ability, and now you're interfacing with that being. Now, the problem is, what does that being have to actually put up with from their perspective in regards to how busy is your mind? What is it that you're projecting to that craft or entity? Are you trying to express a desire for contact? And are you trying to bring that craft so that it comes and lands? Remembering, even when you look at yourself in the mirror, the first thing you do is to start analyzing yourself. And so if the mirror happens to be another consciousness, and that consciousness is of another race, you're going to start to try to analyze that consciousness of that race or that being or that craft, and that's not what they want.
No, because it ultimately it changes them.
It changes them.
Or affects them at least.
And it can affect them. And of course, when these entities, and we'll talk about, the ones that are sort of loving and all the rest of it, not the ones that aren't, they don't actually want to be changed. They understand that everybody wants contact. They also understand that there's a few key concepts that humans don't understand yet, and that is that if a race physically disclosed themselves, even as interdimensionals were disclosing, the first thing that would happen is humans would want to bypass their responsibility for being human and would want to take on board maybe some of the culture of the race. They would want to ask for healing from that race as well.
Guaranteed.
They would want to have a communication and interaction and a relationship with that race. Now, when you look at the way that humanity is at the moment, I think the problem occurs that that may not be the relationship that they want.
No.
And so when we look at all the people that are currently disclosing, and good on them for doing that, by the way, it does take a lot for people to speak out in a clear and concise way. What really happens there is that it creates a situation where people rush out for contact, but the contact actually may not be the contact that you want.
Yeah, and we see that far too often.
Yeah,
and we've had to pull back out of places because the contact wasn't what was being described as.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because that last Ross Coulthard interview we watched with not Jake, with the second guy, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
Yeah, the last guy.
Yeah.
He the way they were talking with the whole psionic stuff is that they seem to have recognized and acknowledged that craft can be conscious beings in their own right. Did you pick that up?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the first time I've really heard them kind of sort of acknowledge that.
Haven't you heard the stories about in the past they had some down craft and they noticed that they had these like two buckets or two indentations inside the craft, and they realized that they were a control mechanism, and so they used to put in trained psychics into these to try to activate the craft. And this is back in the 50s and 60s that they were doing.
Yeah, there's lots of stories.
And of course, what happened to those people? They probably didn't end up being very happy because generally the frequency of the craft can give people some serious problems. And I think if you've been listening to anything from Gary Nolan lately, you'll have heard about the physical interaction that Jake had, and the fact that he ended up with, I think it was alopecia.
Alopecia,
yeah.
It's hair for that.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of physical things. But you could watch that Gary Nolan interview, and sort of clarify that for yourself. But there's, absolutely, there always is some downside to contact, and people might go, oh well, any loving alien would never do that to me. They may not even know that their technology affects you that way.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's another problem.
Yeah. I guess, I think we're coming towards the end of what we wanted to say, but, as we've been saying for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, how many years have we been doing these?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, we've lost count now. The message is the same. The extraterrestrials will disclose themselves when they're ready to be disclosed. In the meantime, we continue to have the dribs and drabs of kind of human disclosure, sort of.
Yeah. We have to be really careful about one thing. So let's say that a group of people using different techniques and technology contact one race, and then that race decides to disclose themselves to humanity.
Yeah.
The problem all of us are going to have is, how trustworthy are they? And they could easily, because humans are it's a very big a big universe out there. Humans are highly untrained in regards to all of this, and there are many beings that can easily present themselves as something else when they're not, and that's the really big issue.
Yeah, and so the message is use your common sense. Do not invite anyone into your house, like literally. But we use that as the metaphor. Seriously, if you're really wanting to do C5 and you just can't help yourself, at least ask your own race to come in, even if you don't know who they are. And you've just got to look at what you're doing objectively. If you see a flash in the sky responding to your request to see a craft, you've got to ask yourself, what is that flash? Is it just the fabric reflecting back at you? Stuff we've talked about for many years. The phenomenon, that's right. Or if it really truly is an extraterrestrial craft, what race is it? And are they the kind of extraterrestrials you really want to be hanging out with? Because trust us, there are plenty out there you don't want to be engaging with.
And the other thing is, it's okay to go outside and look up into the sky and reach out, but there's layers you've got to reach through as well. And just like light has specific levels of frequency, and each of those frequencies may present a type of light, a color. So do all these different levels of frequency where these beings can exist as well.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn how to navigate that. And of course, I could go on and on about this, but from my own personal experiences, but it's more about doing something in an environment where other people are with you, because if you've got a situation where other people are with you, it's a much more safer endeavor to have a couple of people with you when you're doing this, because evidence when you're by yourself is not actually evidence.
No.
Although, it would be nice if it was, but people could just say, well, you just saw that. But of course, you notice Ross and Gary Nolan, they've been going out with these groups to try to give some observational perspective to what's happening.
Yeah.
So that ultimately, they can say, well, I saw that as well.
And it corresponded to the video, which corresponded to this piece of tech they're using and that piece of tech. Definitely don't rely on the love factor. It'd be so easy and nice to say, I'm going to send love, I'm going to project love out into the universe and I'll only get love back. But, we know of one particular race that really does prey on that. So it just comes back to your common sense the whole time. I think I was thinking about this yesterday.
Okay.
If there was one piece of advice we could give to people in terms of who are desperately wanting to develop some level of contact, for me, I would say to them, start with trying to contact and evidence your loved ones in spirit, people that you can actually get evidence from in a proper, evidential manner.
That's where psychometry comes in.
Absolutely, yeah. But
you've got to start somewhere.
You've got to start somewhere. Don't start with extraterrestrial races and don't start with CE5. Start with your loved ones in spirit that can be evidence, asking them for information that you can validate with, say, another family member or somebody to prove that communication that you had was from that person. Just start there and, take it slowly.
All right. Well, we'll be talking again soon. And, of course, if anybody has any questions that they want us to answer, just put them in as a comment under this and we'll write them down and then address them in the next session. Okay. See you all later. Bye.